Hi. So, there are four main troop types. You've got behemoths, you've got riders, you've got barbarians, and you've got your archers. Each of your troop types will be split into two classes. You've got your bestiary, which will have your behemoths. Now, your behemoths are the least important to focus on stats-wise, but we can cover that in a moment. The two behemoth types are raiders, which have the highest load capacity, and marauders, which have the highest base attack in the game. So, you want to use raiders. You'll see that I don't have any, and I'll explain why in a moment. You'll want to use raiders for collecting resources, or if you have a farm account, they're good for plundering all of those resources relatively quickly. Meanwhile, marauders are what you actually want to attack with, because marauders will actually deal damage to your opponent's troops. Behemoth raiders do not have very high attack at all, and no amount of buffing can change that. But marauders can be a real pain. They are most useful in things like Primal Arena, though. They are not as good at attacking other players. Against troops, they do not do very much at all. Next, we have our archers. You have javelineers, and you have your hunters. They're referred to as archers, but these are essentially only good for attacking wildlings. They do not do that much damage to everything else. They're better than behemoths in most cases against players. However, you'll find that they only really shine in things like hunting wildlings, elite monsters, and for things like Primal Arena. Your javelineers are what will be the most useful to you for your hunters, because they will actually counteract riders, which are the troop that you should focus on most. Riders are split into two tiers. One, essentially, is like the archer, but on a dinosaur. They will serve essentially the same purpose, but they do it better. And then you also have your vanguard riders, which are melee troops. The vanguard riders will attack enemy riders and archers first, which will aid you in dealing with enemy troops. But both classes of rider have the highest march speed. Your barbarians are going to be warriors, which, if I remember correctly, okay, I don't remember correctly. Okay. Your warriors will counteract enemy riders about as effectively as your javelineers. And I'll demonstrate this in a moment. But your warriors are important, but not necessarily the kind of troop that you should use the most in your squad with regards to your barbarians, because for that, you want your guardians. They will soak damage for the rest of your troops first. The only time that troops can bypass guardians is if you have a range increasing buff, such as the Frostbite artifact, which increases troop attack range by 1. So essentially what that means is that troops like your archer troops and your mounted archers can attack your enemy's backline, troops behind the guardians, without needing to kill all of the guardians first. Now, first, we're going to go over march speed. So, I'm going to go over here, about 30 miles away from my tribe center. This food tile. You can see that if I select sort by speed, it defaults to sending the tier 8 riders, but not the tier 9 riders. That is because the vanguard riders actually move faster, ever so slightly. You can see the vanguard riders would take 1 minute and 7 seconds. Meanwhile, the mounted archers would take 1 minute and 12 seconds. That's not a very big difference, but it is important to know that. Meanwhile, if you compare it to the warriors, they would take 1 minute and 41 seconds. Javelineers would take 2 minutes. Archers would take just as long. The honored guardians are only moving slower because they are tier 7 troops. However, the slowest troops are the Behemoth Marauders and Behemoth Raiders. Marauders are faster than the Behemoth Raiders. However, it's only by a little bit. And that's because the Marauders do not have the same load capacity. They do have higher load capacity still than the other troop types, but it is nowhere near as good as the Raiders would have. You can see the Behemoth Marauders, I would only need 4,713 troops to completely collect this tile. Meanwhile, it would take me almost double that in riders to collect it. So, that's the difference between the troops' march speeds. To demonstrate the differences in damage, alright, so I'm in the Tower of Trial so that I can show you exactly what kinds of damage the troop types will do when they are in their proper formations. We're going to attack floor 21 hard mode, and you can see I've got a decent mix of everything, but with primarily guardians. This is for what I mentioned a moment ago about guardians soaking all of the damage for the rest of your team. You can see that in clearing up to floor 21, only guardians have been lost, which is also shown here, where if you look, all of the wounded out of floor 20 were the Guardians. None of the other troops took damage. So let's go look at that battle report. Again, there were 11,912 wounded. You can see a few of my non-Guardian troops took damage, but disproportionately, Guardians took the most damage. Which is why it is beneficial for you to have higher barbarian defense as well as your rider attack and defense. Those 3 stats are the most important for you to increase during your entire time of playing the game from level 10 to Tribe Center level 35. Because if you look at how many kills each troop type got, you'll see even the tier 8 riders, but the tier 8 and tier 9 riders combined, did significantly more damage than any of the other troop types. And this is also where you can see what I was talking about earlier, about the behemoths not actually doing that much damage, even though they've got the highest base attack. Because while they may have the highest base attack, they also attack last. So buffing them doesn't serve much of a purpose, because by the time that they would be taking damage and being able to deal damage, most of the enemy squad should already be defeated, or you are likely going to lose. Because any attack where you do not have over 50% of the kills will be counted as a loss. For leveling up your troop stats, the best ways to do that quickly, although in the long run it becomes gradually more inefficient, will be to level up your battle skill tree in your Temple of Wisdom. You can see each level gives a few percent. However, that will eventually cap out. As you can see, even though I've got most of my skill tree done, 3% with each of those is not going to amount to much. Once you hit Tribe Center level 23, you'll unlock the Tribal Embassy. With the Tribal Embassy, you've got your tactical lore, which involves things like rider armor for increasing defense, hunter armor, ditto, and in the tactical lore tab, there is a tab for each troop type that will buff defense, load capacity, march speed, HP, attack, more defense, more load capacity, more march speed, more HP, and then attack and damage is last. As you can see, I've not bothered to do much at all with the behemoths. I've essentially only done these upgrades for the sake of gaining the power in events that give rewards based on how much power you gain in X amount of time. I've mostly focused on my barbarians in the tactical lore tab, simply because my barbarians were the farthest behind, and they are one of the more difficult troops to buff when it comes to your gear. Which brings us to where most of your stats will come from when you reach the later stages of the game. Your gear. You can see, even though I am chief level, what chief level am I? I am chief level 40, but I'm still using the level 25 Axe of the Gale, even though it would be completely free for me to collect the materials for one of the level 30 pieces. This is because the Axe of the Gale buffs both Barbarian and Rider attack. Those two stats are really important for your main hand. I'm also using enhancements that increase Rider and Barbarian defense and attack. For my crown, again, I went for just whatever artifact gave the best bonus to Barbarian and Rider attack. You'll see I've got a lot of Hunter enhancements on. If you have Rider or Barbarian enhancements instead, you definitely want to use those. The only reason that I'm using the Hunter enhancements is because if I go into my enhancement menu, sorry about that, wrong button, you'll see I don't actually have very good Barbarian or Rider enhancements. All of my good Rider and Barbarian enhancements are already on my gear. Meanwhile, I have an excess of decent Hunter enhancements that are also mostly on my gear already. For your leg piece, you again want to go with just whatever gives the best bonus to riders, which in this case will be the Shaman shoes, which also have the added bonus of giving increased march speed. For your accessory, your offhand, and your armor, you want to use the Marauder set pieces, which you can get from killing the Dimetrodon, which is this guy right here. The higher level that you kill, the more likely you are to get the special drop that it has, called the Ancient Statue. So, these Dimetrodons drop the Ancient Statues, which you will then use to go into your Relic Altar. You'll craft the Marauder set. The War Axe is not worth it at all, because it does not give any rider boosts. And while the Greaves may be helpful, I find that they're largely unnecessary. However, you want the shield the pauldrons, and the ring to get the best bonuses as a free-to-play player. The set bonuses are not very important because what you gain with the set bonus, you do not make up for with actual stats that are possible. I think that's pretty much it, but if you have any questions, feel free to ask me in the comments. Thank you.